The growing threat of climate change could define the contours of this century more dramatically than any other.
This is a quality of life issue. You want to tell people that their concern and their desire for clean air and clean water is elitist?
My name is Cosmo Wessel, and this is my 8th grade project. I decided to make a movie about climate change because of its current prevalence and the severity of the effects it has had and will have in the future. Within this video, I interviewed 3 people: Mayor Myrick, the mayor of Ithaca, my grandpa, who is the county commissioner of Leelanau County, Michigan, and lastly, Larry Momby, who is a businessman who runs a winery in Leelanau County. Even though he is not involved in government like the other 2, he's still dealing with the effects of climate change.
What are some of the effects climate change has had on agriculture and like wineries in your region?
Well, so far it's been accumulating over the past 40 years that I've been aware of the scientific evidence about climate change. We've been looking at it, and I don't know if you understand how important Lake Michigan is to the climate of our region, but it moderates the cold so that we end up with a little bit longer growing season in the fall, and then the reverse happens in the winter. The lake gets cold in the winter, and this time of the year the water is much colder than the land, and so as warm air systems come across the lake, they get cooled down, and we don't start growing quite as early in the season, and so we're protected from spring frosts because the vines and trees are still dormant. The problem with climate change is that as the energy in the atmosphere increases, all the extremes of the weather that we see are magnified. We get it when we have a warm period, it's warmer than typical. When it's cold, it's colder than typical. And all these things can be modified by Lake Michigan, but Lake Michigan is a fixed size, so it can only do so much damping of those things. The problem that we are seeing is as the atmosphere gets more and more violent in terms of the temperature swings, that lake effect is chopping off some of that, but we're still getting too many cold incidents in the spring of frost and in the fall of frost. So all that's really bad. The other bigger thing that we've got going on is that climate is changing and our weather patterns are changing. We're also seeing that the humidity levels during the spring and the summer and the fall are much higher than they used to be. And the best climate models I've seen generally predict it between 2050 and 2080, somewhere in that range. Our summer weather is going to be much like what Missouri has been in the past. And that's not good for us at all. That's too hot, too humid. It'll cause disease problems. So those are the kind of things we're seeing right now from climate change. So that's just one kind of local example of how climate change is not good.
I am Cosmo Wessel. I am doing this project for my 8th grade project at my school, LACS, and this project is about climate change and how local government and people can act on it and help solve the crisis.
I'm Savante Myrick. I'm the mayor of the city of Ithaca.
The first question I have is, what is the role of local government in working to adapt and mitigate climate change?
Very good question. Local government is the government that's closest to the ground. So if you have the federal government and the state government, we're the local government, which is where the rubber meets the road, which means that the physical impacts of climate change are going to be felt first and need to be reacted to by local governments, right? So when there's a severe storm or droughts that lead to more fires, it's our Department of Public Works and our fire department, our police department that responds right away. When climate change leads to disaster, as we believe it will, it'll be local governments that have to respond first. But the second thing is, local government has an immense amount of control over land use planning. And I think we need to do a better job of building things closer to each other. right? Building homes closer to businesses, building businesses closer to schools, so that people can have shorter commutes, right? So if they have to drive, they're using less emissions while they do. But then also that they can walk more, they can bike more, and denser buildings that have, instead of just one family in them or two, but have 20 families inside one building, have a better ratio. It's a better envelope, right, of indoor area to exterior. And the more exterior you have for every square foot of interior, the more energy you're wasting that's going out into the environment, either the heat or the cold. So that sort of dense land use planning, I think, is one of the best things we can do to preserve our environment.
What Mayor Myrick is talking about here is smart growth, which creates cities that are more energy efficient and enjoyable to live in. These would be a huge step towards combating climate change.
It's frustrating. I mean, I think the best things we'll do in partnership, right? I think the federal government has powers that they need to be using, and that frankly right now they're not using. They're sort of actively taking us backwards, actually. But there's a ton that the local government, and by extension, local people can do to reduce our own emissions.
Hi, I'm Ty Wessel. I'm a county commissioner in Leland County, Michigan. I've been a county commissioner since 2014. I'm a retired educator, and I ran for the county commission because I was concerned about the environment, housing, affordable housing, family support, and how the county might benefit our local families.
All right, thank you. The first question is, what is the role of local government in working to adapt and to mitigate climate change?
Well, in Michigan, county commissioners and county government is very limited in their authority. Our real authority comes from being able to influence other people. We serve as a convener, we serve as a communicator, we can pass resolutions. In Leland County, we have a number of people that are concerned about the environment. And although we can't pass some of the legislation and the ordinances that we'd like to do, we do connect our local people with state government and federal government. So when there's an issue, I can cause people to get together and consider options. I can also influence the conversation. So, for example, we had an issue about septic inspections and septic problems and water pollution in Leland County. And although the county is limited in what we might do, I was able to pull together the experts and come up with a position, and then help those local people connect with the state and federal representatives to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you support the idea of the Green New Deal? And what would the Green New Deal look like for Ithaca?
Good question. I do support it. What would it look like in Ithaca is a question that we've got to figure out together. I think it would look like a few things. I mean, one is a new building policy, which requires green buildings. The second thing it would look like is retrofitting existing buildings and hiring hundreds of people to do that. And all the stuff I've mentioned before, more infrastructure for transportation that reduces emissions. But the truth is, we will need a partnership with the federal government to get it done, right? Like, we can do our part, but we need the heft of the federal government for that investment. We can't just do it ourselves.
Shortly after this interview, Mayor Myrick announced the Green New Deal for Ithaca. This brings our local communities towards a life with the Green New Deal and proposes net zero carbon emissions in Ithaca by 2030.
All right. Do you support the Green New Deal? And what would it look like for Leland County?
Well, I went to a lecture by a professor a week ago on the Green New Deal, and I was sold on it. I was sold on the economics of it. I was sold on the potential of it, and I wish I were more optimistic that it wouldn't get caught up into the political arena, and it would save us energy, it would save us money, it would save our climate, it would save our world. And so, yes, I support the Green New Deal. Whatever that ends up to be, I hope that's at the forefront of our conversations. But I think it really means learning to live a little bit more intelligently, being a little bit more efficient, being a little bit more planned. I think it means a change of lifestyle, and that's going to be tough because the opinion leaders, especially, I think, aren't willing to sacrifice.
Although the federal government is not currently doing enough to combat climate change, there are a handful of politicians that are making efforts to do so. One of these people is Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the leader of the Green New Deal. She has done a great job at connecting the Green New Deal to other issues, such as wealth and equality.
This is about our lives. This is about American lives. And it should not be partisan. Science should not be partisan. We are facing a national crisis. And if we do not ascend to that crisis, if we tell the American public that we are more willing to invest and bail out big banks than we are willing to invest in our farmers and our urban families, then I don't know what we're here doing. And for the entire 30 years of my lifetime, we did not make substantial investments to prepare our entire country for what we knew was coming. So now it's coming all up at the end.
The Green New Deal will do a ton to save our environment, but more still needs to happen at both the local and national levels of government. Local leaders such as Mayor Myrick and Ty Wessel are doing a lot to deal with climate change, such as new building policies and dealing with the consequences of natural disasters. I think especially the federal government needs to step in and do more, but in the meantime there are also things that people who are not in government can do. These include consume fewer resources. This not only helps climate, but it can even make us happier. Another is to actively participate in grassroots action, such as attending protests. And lastly, is to make an effort to become informed and active citizens by voting, writing to your elected officials, and holding them accountable for working in our best interests. The reason I like the Green New Deal is that it frames climate action in ways that addresses other societal issues, such as poverty, job growth, and infrastructure development. Businessmen like Larry Mobby are also having to deal with climate change, such as having a harder time growing their crops and having to adapt to new climate conditions. In conclusion, I think that some people are doing a great job of dealing with climate change right now, but a lot of people aren't. This problem is so big that we need everybody on board to solve it. Thank you, Larry Mobby, Mayor Myrick, and my grandpa, Ty Wessel, for your help. Thank you for taking the time to do these interviews. I really appreciated it, and the information you gave was perfect for this project. Also, thank you, Dad, for helping me with this project and being my 8th grade project mentor. I learned a lot from everyone.